Hey, and welcome back to the Worship Guitar Skills channel. Now, if you're a worship guitarist looking to level up your practice sessions, then you've come to the right place today. Because I'll be sharing some 10 essential tips that you can use to transform your practice routine so that you can become a more effective and inspired musician and ultimately worshiper. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Our first tip is to set clear goals. First up, whenever you're practicing, you always want to start with a clear and achievable goal for each practice session. Whether that's working on your chord voicings or your fretboard knowledge or learning a new song, knowing your target for that worship practice session will help to keep you focused along the way. And remember, a goal without a plan is just a wish. You know, there's so many guitar players that say they want to improve their playing or their technique or their chord knowledge or their melodic playing or their tone or their theory knowledge or whatever the case may be. They want to get better guitar players, but they don't have a clear goal. And it's really important for you to kind of understand where is it in that you are in your playing that's lacking at the moment that's keeping you from reaching that next level. Because you know, they say a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So we typically work on 8 areas that we want people to go ahead and improve as a guitar player, and I'll cover those a little bit later in the video, but it's important that you know where you are weak so that you can work on those areas and improve. Our second tip here is quality over quantity. It's really not about how long you practice, but rather about how well you practice. In fact, it's better to have shorter practice sessions where you can maintain a high energy and a high focus throughout your practice time, because quality will beat quantity every time. There's so many guitar players, when they pick up the guitar, they don't actually practice. They're just playing the same old things over and over. It's like that famous saying that doing the same thing over and over, yet expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. And for guitar players, because we use our muscle memory and our motor skills to play, it's so easy to fall into the trap once you pick up the guitar to play all the patterns that are useful, to play the things, the chords, the licks, the riffs, whatever it is on the guitar that gives us that dopamine release, that boost, that feel-good energy, but we don't actually work on the things that we need to improve. And that's why I'm saying it's better to have better quality practice sessions where you can really go ahead and work on those areas that you need to improve, which will raise the quality of that session. Yes, it might not feel good when you have to come up to the reality knowing that you don't really know the fretboard that well, or that your rhythm playing is kind of lacking some musicality. But it's by facing these things and then designing something within your practice sessions to go ahead and address those weak points that will then add a lot of quality to your practice sessions, which means it's not about practicing harder or more, but it's about practicing smarter. The next step is all about warming up properly. You never want to skip your warm-up. Definitely begin with some finger stretches, playing some scales, or even just some simple chords just to get the blood flowing on inside of your hands and your fingers. Get those muscles to loosen up and ready for action, because a proper warm-up session is really the foundation for a productive practice session. If you think about athletes, maybe someone's going to go for a run, or they're going to play some kind of a sports game, or whatever the case may be, they want to warm up beforehand so that everything is ready, nimble and loose to go for when it's time to perform. Now, if you just jump into your practice sessions without actually warming up, what you're going to find is there's going to be a level of resistance. You're not really going to be ready to run full out. It's not about playing fast, but it's about really just practicing intentionally and deliberately. And when you are not warmed up, your hands and your fingers are not really going to be ready to give you that clear runway to actually get busy and start working on the things that you need to work on. So make sure that you dedicate some time at the beginning of your practice sessions to warm up properly. Our next step is all about working on your timing. You know, they say timing is everything, especially in worship settings. It's not really about what you're playing, but it's more about how you play it. And this is where good timing and good feel comes in. Now, if you want to improve in these areas, go ahead and practice with a metronome or even along with some backing tracks. Now, if you're looking for some backing tracks that are worship focused, with regards to the style and the progressions, make sure that you go ahead and check out the link in the description. When you have tracks like that that are designed within that style, within the progressions, across different tempos and in different keys, then you have more opportunities to play some of the ideas that you're working on. Maybe it's rhythms, maybe it's melodic improvisation, maybe it's just outlining chords, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's practicing familiar shapes in unfamiliar keys or in different parts of the guitar neck. If you do that without drums, bass, keyboards and all these kind of things, then you don't really have the full canvas or the full setting as it relates to actually getting busy and working on those things. So not only will that help you with your timing, because of course if you put on a backing track at say 78 beats per minute, there's going to be the time factor that you need to work in, but it's also going to give you the constraints as it relates to the key, as it relates to the progression that you need to play over. So that's a tip for improving your rhythm playing and your overall musical feel. Our next step is all about practicing dynamics. Music, and especially worship music, thrives on dynamics, and as a guitarist you want to be able to play with dynamics and emotion. So that's where you want to experiment with your volume, with your intensity as you're playing, as well as learning how to gradually play the same progression higher and higher up the neck to kind of master that ebb and flow of a song, and your guitar should really move and breathe with the music. You hear that often when you listen to drummers in modern worship songs, in terms of like how they use dynamics. The song might start off nice and slow in terms of not a lot of stuff happening on the drums, but as you go into the choruses that are building and ultimately building to a big bridge, those dynamics are very important in driving the song. Now as a guitarist, while we might not be the main driver like the drummer with all those techniques to kind of make the song build to a nice crescendo at the right times, you can definitely contribute to those dynamics as well. And it's not just about playing louder or harder or whatever the case may be. It's about how can you build, going from say something low to high, then it's almost like an orchestra that's building up into a crescendo. Or how can you do open rhythms that gradually get more interesting and a bit more energetic for those higher energy sections in a song. Don't overlook dynamics in your playing, because that will allow you to really reach some new levels in your musicality when you are able to draw on different dynamics and emotion in your playing. Now tip number 6 is all about music theory. A little theory can really go a long way. When you understand chord structures and chord progressions, it really enriches your playing at a deep level and even helps you to come up with guitar parts right on the spot, because at the end of the day, theory is the language of music, and the better you can understand it, the better you'll be able to communicate that on the guitar. There's this common misconception that when you learn theory, it will take out the spontaneity and the flow of your playing. While the contrary is actually true. A lot of times people are not able to be in that state of flow or play with that spontaneity because they don't know where to go, or they are afraid of venturing out into a territory where they might not fully understand everything, or where they run the risk of making a mistake. When you understand theory, it gives you the confines and the constraints that you can go ahead and play within and really come up and become a lot more musical and a lot more free and spontaneous in your playing. And when you can do that in worship settings, it is definitely a super valuable skill. Now, another tip is to memorize songs. Your goal should really be to memorize songs and not just play them with your head kind of stuck in the chart. Because when you do that, you're able to play a song without looking at the chart the whole time. It's going to free up some mental capacity and focus so that you can connect more deeply with the music as well as the congregation, really turning all of your notes and your rhythms into opportunities for people, whether it's the band, whether it's a congregation, whatever the case may be, to truly engage in worship and not just go through the motions. I think it's important for us to understand that it's more about playing songs on a Sunday. There's a lot more that happens behind the scenes. It's an expression of worship. We are there leading the congregation into worship, and it's important for us to not be so preoccupied with the charts and the chords and remembering everything you've got to play, you got to have some of that freedom and spontaneity to listen to the Spirit and kind of be ready to go with whatever the Spirit leads you to do or guides you to do. That freedom and spontaneity is really very valuable. And when you know your songs without having to look at the chart the whole time, it helps you to respond accordingly. Tip number 8 is all about incorporating ear training. You want to train your ear to recognize chords and intervals, progressions, as well as melodies. This is a total game changer for learning new songs right on the fly and playing more confidently by ear in any setting. And even if you're not super musical, this is definitely a skill that can be learned like any other skill. At the end of the day, the way that we consume music is through our ears. It's the way that we listen. Now, there's different levels in which you can listen. Some people, when they hear music, they just hear one sound. It's just kind of noise. But if you're a trained musician, then you can hear, all right, that's a 6-4-1-5 chord progression. The guitarist was using octaves over there. Or there's some really cool sus4 voicing that they're playing over the bridge. Or there's that repetitive pentatonic idea. When you can listen to what's happening harmonically in terms of the chords they're playing, in terms of the progression, and even melodically in terms of the melodies that they're playing and what intervals they are using, where they play on the guitar, what scales they might be using, what kind of chord tones they might be using, and even inversions and all those wonderful things. Now, even if, as I just mentioned all of this, some of you might feel overwhelmed and, wow, I didn't even know about some of these things, and my ear, it kind of feels like I'm tone deaf. But I just want to encourage you, whether you feel like that or whether you feel like you are ready to improve, whatever the case may be, just remember it's a skill that you can develop, like playing faster, like learning more chords, like lifting weights, like getting fit, whatever the case may be. It's the same with ear training, and you can train your ear to recognize all these different musical concepts that I've just mentioned. Tip number 9 is all about playing with others. Whenever it's possible, you want to go ahead and jam with other musicians, because then your playing will improve drastically and it will enhance your overall ability to contribute to any worship session. You can learn a lot from other musicians. Just take drummers, for example. Drummers, they have a different understanding of rhythm because of all the interdependence that they need to have between their 4 limbs as it relates to what they're doing with the kick drum and the hats and whatever they're doing with the snare and the toms and the cymbals. There's all these things that are happening on a rhythmic level, and a lot of my coolest guitar parts that I've come up with, as I listened back to that, I realized, oh wow, I'm actually just reflecting back what I heard the drums do. Maybe it's a specific phrase they played, maybe it's a specific rhythm or whatever the case will be. So you can learn a lot from rhythm by playing with a drummer. Same with a bass player. Their focus as a bass player, forming the second part of the rhythm section together with a drummer, they have a different way in which they engage in rhythm but still pay respect to the harmony, right? In terms of like, when do they play the root, the third, the fifth, what kind of rhythms are they using to make some interesting parts and all that kind of stuff. So there's some cool things that you can learn from playing with a bass guitarist. And then of course piano players, they have a different command of harmony because they didn't grow up or learn their instrument like us guitarists, where you just learn one shape and you can move it all over the guitar neck, and we kind of have to deal with the mystery of the fretboard. They have this black and white world in front of them, and they learn harmony in a different way, in a way that they can play chords and voicings. The same thing with singers. Listen to how they sing a melody. How can you learn from that and articulate your melodies on the guitar more like a singer might articulate and vocalize those kind of things. And then of course you get to the melodic instruments. It might be a saxophone player, a violin player, a cellist, whatever the case may be. Every instrument, they have all these different areas of focus that you can learn a ton from them. So I want to encourage you to play with other musicians and then kind of get out of your comfort zone and don't just play by yourself or just with other guitar players. While that is also great to do in terms of the guitar focused, when you go and venture out into other musicians and even other styles of music, then you're open to gaining some new insights as it relates to music, and at the end of the day gaining a competitive advantage as it relates to how you want to improve as a player. Now, our 10th and final tip is to reflect and record. You want to reflect on and record your practice sessions. When you listen back to what you've played and what you've been working on, it can reveal some growth areas and victories at the same time. It's all about that continuous improvement and those celebrations along the way. You see, when you are playing something, the way that you are hearing what you're playing is very different than when you record yourself and listen to yourself afterwards. Maybe you've experienced this when you've had your voice recorded. I had to kind of get used to that. Obviously, we film a lot of videos, but every time I hear my voice on a recording, it sounds very different than what it sounds like when it's just in my head while I'm recording the video. Now, the same thing happens with your guitar playing. When you play something, it might sound a certain way, whether it's on a Sunday, whether it's in a practice session, but when you listen back to it while not playing, you are hearing things that you're not able to hear in the moment. And that's, like I said, it will help you to identify some weak spots that you want to improve, or you can celebrate some victories along the way as well by finding some things that you didn't hear in the moment that you might want to go ahead and do on a more continual basis. So integrating all of these strategies into your practice sessions can not only transform your guitar skills, but even your spiritual expression through music and ultimately worship. And at the end of the day, just remember that patience and perseverance is really important. Every practice session is a step closer to where you want to be at the end of the day. So keep on strumming, keep on pushing, and let every chord and every note you play on the guitar be a true sacrifice of praise. So there we go, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. For more tips on worship music and beyond, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, and then share some things with us about your own practice journey in the comments. And then until next time, keep the faith and keep on strumming. Cheers.